What happened to Nico?
He suddenly appeared.
Joy to the world.
Yeah, I was came down from the skies.
Hello, everyone. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon from wherever you are. This is On the Inside Podcast. It's a podcast where we discuss various emotions. And today, it's our season finale. Can you believe it? It's been 6 episodes, once every 2 weeks, which means that we've been doing this for 3 months now? 12 weeks.
Yeah, 2 months and a half. Yeah.
Wow. All right. Hi, everyone who's watching. We are Sandbox, Sean, Amerie, and Nico. Thank you for joining us today. We decided that in the season finale, we should talk about something happier.
Uplifting.
And what more uplifting emotion we can discuss than joy and happiness? Right? This is something that a lot of people say that they want to experience. A lot of people do the things they do because they say they want to be happy. Right? Well, what is happiness? What does it mean? How do we generate more happiness? What is toxic positivity? These and I suppose many other things will be part of our discussion today. So, hello everyone. Once again, thank you for joining us. Well, let's start off this conversation with this question. All right, what's one thing that brought you joy today? Okay, while you think of your answer, let me go first. All right, so a number of you might know I got tested positive for COVID. Right, that was about 3 days ago. So right now I'm under quarantine order, and about half an hour before this particular podcast, I actually went live on Facebook and YouTube, and I was sharing my thoughts and my experience. And one of the things that made me really happy with it was I had the opportunity to reassure people about what it's like to get COVID. And one of the things I did mention was, there are people who have had it worse than me, but I'm fortunate and I'm very, very lucky and happy to be part of the 98% of people who are vaccinated that don't have any serious symptoms. So happy to be part of the 98% and also happy to have the opportunity to share it with everyone, so that gives more people a sense of comfort and a sense of assurance, because this thing is going to spread. All right. Amerie, what's one thing that brought you joy today?
Before I say that, I was just gonna comment on the millions of puns in my head when you were talking about that. So essentially, you're talking about staying positive after being positive, right? And I don't know, those little things give me joy just to play with words in my head. But yeah, the one thing that happened today was when I was walking to Starbucks, and I saw a yellow butterfly, right? It just kind of, went past me. And it was just a really fleeting moment, but it felt really nice. Yeah, that gave me a very surprising sense of joy, because it was a slow start to the morning, and just even though it was that fleeting moment, it just makes you feel more connected to what's around you. I like that moment.
It's like times when you're so bogged down by work and so many other things, and when I speak to my friends and they're like, just go out and smell the flowers.
That's what my best friend would say too.
Really?
Yeah.
Just now as you were talking about your play on words, I don't know if I mentioned this to you, and some people ask me, why did you post the positive ART test on Facebook and Instagram, right? And I was like, everyone who posts something, it's all a negative test. right? So I thought I'll just post something different. I was like, oh, there's so much negativity on Facebook.
So you want to post something positive instead.
We need more positivity in this world.
You are spreading it. You are spreading the positivity right there.
Nico, what's one thing that brought you joy today?
Well, I'm glad. So I was saying earlier that I'm glad I was trying to plan a nap before we go live. So I didn't quite have the plan like 30-minute nap, but I did get like 8 minutes of nap. I timed it, so I'll be on time, and it felt great. Those kind of like 2-3 minutes. So I don't have. I'm blessed in the sense that I don't really have like troubles falling asleep. I fall very easily. Fall asleep very easily. So those 2 minutes, like lying down, resting and just being worried about nothing instead of like just waiting for sleep to come was great. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I noticed among what the three of us shared are, it seems to be this. It's the little things, right, that kind of seem to matter. It's not always like a big celebration or a big success that brings this kind of joy, and it's I don't know, like for me. I remember on Thursday when I was forced to rest, right? Because I had a little bit of fever, and sometimes just even sleeping more. I just woke up feeling so much happier. It's something I felt like I haven't had for a really, really long time. If we were able to find this happiness in all these little things in life, I mean, why do you think some people find it difficult, right, to get happiness? Right, because people tend to say, "Oh, it's I'm not happy." It's some people always seem to be so unhappy. I want to say negative, right? But yeah, but they seem to be really unhappy about a lot of things. So, why do you think this is the case? Amerie, you want to go first?
Sure. I mean, we were just having a chat about it, and really, it's how we are wired as humans, right? We are more prone to looking at the bad, not so good at finding the good. Because when we're back in the day, our ancestors would be more likely to survive if they're more wired to look for threats, and they could be anxious and fearful, and constantly on the lookout for things that might go wrong. And hence we now have a really strong bias towards the negative, right? We tend to look out for things that might not go so well. Yeah, we're more sort of wired that way to be looking out for the bad stuff. And as a result, it is a lot harder to look for the good. And when something good happens, it's harder to believe that that's going to stay as well, right? I think a lot of people that I've met with or spoken with often talk about how sometimes even when they feel happy, there is this constant sense that it might just be taken away from them. So in a way, there's also this fear of being happy as well.
Fear of being happy. So they don't. What you're saying is that they don't remember that happiness, but what the overriding thought is, what if that happiness goes away?
So it is hard to be in the moment. So even if they experience joy or experience happiness, right, the sheer fear or anxiety that it might just escape them, just in a fleeting moment, it stops them from really basking in the joy or any positive emotion that they experience at a point in time.
Nico, why do you think it's so difficult for people to bask in these little joys of life?
Yeah, I think that I really don't have much to add over what Amerie said, but again, it's just our biology. I mean, I feel we really wired to find problems to solve and expect problems and start solving them before they happen, even when they will never be happening. I mean, I think we all have experience of like, anticipating some like events, like whatever that might look like. Something we're stressed about, we're scared of. There might be a meeting at work, there might be a presentation, there could be thousands of things, being with a certain family members or difficult people, and having all those scenarios about like the number of things that can go wrong, and just and what we would say and what they would say, and then like how we kind of play in advance the events, like maybe like dozens of times, hundreds of times, and just in an attempt to really be prepared for what might be coming up and what we might have to respond to, so we're not surprised. So it's just that sense of like always having to get ready for something, always being on our toes, getting ready to when those problems show up.
Yeah, and it's also the confirmation bias, right? The confirmation bias. It's the tendency to look out for evidence around you to confirm what you believe. So if you think that things are going to go bad, you're going to find all these different ways to confirm this belief that things actually would go bad after all.
So it's people should read a broader range of articles to gain a different perspective.
I don't know. I think it's kind of hard. I mean, well, I like to say at the first step, just acknowledging the fact that that's what we're doing is useful. Just knowing that, okay, well, that's what's going on, and just being aware that we tend to do that, and that's hardwired, and kind of like everyone does it. That kind of lifts some weight, because sometimes you might be like putting also a lot of pressure on yourself, or just being like negative, or worrying too much, but it's just normal, like we all do it. And I feel that already just a slightly bit more space around those kind of the kind of pressure that we put on ourselves, when we acknowledge the fact that, okay, that's normal, that's cool, and maybe over time we able to observe it with some distance, get a sense of like, oh, okay, so here am I, trying to like, this is like the, maybe like, oh, that's the tense scenario, dreadful scenario of the day. I wonder what the next one will be like. I mean, there can be some kind of distance around like what was going on, I feel. I mean, that's kind of really like a first step to me, at least. Because, yeah, go ahead.
I think in your example as well, it sounds like there's the element of curiosity, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, that can open some curiosity. Just how often do we even do it? How much time do we spend like doing this kind of running through those scenarios and so on. And also for me, it's the acknowledgement that, okay, the idea behind the fact that it's really hardwired and it's really just there in our brain, and that comes from like evolution. That, he had at least some survival values. It helps us be prepared for negative stuff. The fact that it's just so hardwired makes it like, might help us realize that beating that kind of tendency to be negative is really, asking people to do that is really a tall order. Like it's not easy to do. Going against like a biological drive or biological need, it's hard to do, and so we should really be really gentle with ourselves in terms of trying to beat that kind of tendency to see the negative and go in those negative scenarios also, I think. Yeah.
So if it's something that a lot of us are born with, right? So we tend to remember negative things more than the positive ones. You remember the insults more than the praises that you get. If you tend to remember the traumatic experience more than the good experiences, how or why do some people seem to be able to do it? Is it because they were born different, or is it because they train their mind to look at things in a different way? Ooh. Nico, you want to go first? Any thoughts? Or Amerie, you have something?
I think Amerie had some.
Yeah,
Some
Amerie?
thoughts?
Yeah, I just have many thoughts at the moment. Sorry. I just wanted to share this description by Rick Hansen that I thought will be quite interesting at this point. He talks about how our mind is a bit like a Teflon non-stick pan for positive things, right? And it's kind of like Velcro for the negative ones. And I thought, yeah, that's a really nice metaphor in what we're discussing here, which is really true, right? I mean, a lot of the good stuff doesn't stick because we didn't actually, we're not wired that way. And and when we talk about, say, personalities, sure, there could be some personality types that are perhaps more prone to being pessimistic. They're more sort of easily caught up in negative thinking patterns. But I do believe that this is something we can train. You can train the mind to be more aware of positive experiences and to learn to stay in those experiences, right? And sometimes what we do is to think about ways to add more pockets of these moments in our everyday life. And it could simply just be noticing more of what's around you, right? Because the more present we can be, the more we're also able to derive joy from our experiences. Because if we're always in our heads worrying, thinking, right, we're not really present. We're also missing out on a lot of opportunities for us in the here and now to feel good.
Nico, what do you think? Joy,
Um,
natural or trained?
okay, so I think so. Yeah, so when you talk about personality traits and people who maybe tend to don't have that kind of negativity anymore, not as much. I mean, there's always whenever there's those differences between people and traits, there's always some downsides to it. So it's possible that people who don't see don't have those kind of negative, don't experience so much of those negative feelings, or don't worry so much, also tend to miss danger when it's really there.
True.
Lack an ability to see what can be a potential dangerous behavior, and lack a tendency to maybe pause and evaluate before they do something, because more people will be like, oh, that might be potentially dangerous, that might turn out bad, and those people might lack those kind of that ability, which obviously might be a problem, because then we run into actually dangerous situations, and might be hurt. So I think when we kind of think in terms of, I would say, like, out of the box, that we kind of like, we come out with our personality, and oh yeah, some people we tend to worry more, some people we tend to worry less. There's always downsides. So it's not like the people who worry less are blessed in a way. They're definitely going to be like a negative side of those things, and that's my belief, at least. But I think, and so what it says then is that what matters is that how you train, like how you practice. So I had conversation with people who went through like very difficult life experiences, like childhood experiences, and that essentially managed to overcome them without any kind of external help, without seeking like guidance from maybe a counselor or a psychologist. And so what they tell me was that they just decided to make a choice. Like, in a moment, they had an options of letting those memories come back, and delving on the past, and having this kind of like a negative emotion showing up and everything because of what they had been through. And the fear also that might come up with the future, seeing danger in some situations where actually obviously there are none, and so on. And so what they told me was that it's really just about the choice. They say it's kind of like, at some point they say, okay, this has to stop, and decide to focus on something that's not that's positive. And when those kind of thoughts shows up, then I decide to think, I distract myself, like I do something positive, or I deliberately focus on something positive. So that this idea of like, there has to be a deliberate practice, a deliberate choice. And so what they told me was that, of course, it's not easy, it's difficult, and the potential for having those negative thoughts is still there. But the metaphor was like, it's kind of like a garden that stopped going into, and it started like to grow some like shrubs, and then there's some like things in a way, and it's little by little, it gets more difficult to get in. So it might still be there. There is potential for these negative thoughts to come up and this worry to come up. But by practicing getting away from them, moving away from them, it becomes less. They lose their power over you in a way. Yeah.
So these are things that have to be practiced from time to time. Yeah.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be just. It doesn't have to. It's just reminding ourselves. For instance, I just want to share a quick practice where you might try, and then and it's just simply so you might have a negative thought, you might be lost in like worry and so on, and you can just add to the thought in your head, or you can say that, and you can say yes, but also I am truly blessed. And then what might happen is that just stating that will bring up stuff that actually are currently going well in your life. Without denying the fact that there might be some real worries and so on. That can help bring a balance and have that sense of like, actually give some space for whatever positive there is to actually coming and you actually experiencing it. Yeah.
So that kind of offsets the impact of the.
Yeah. And it's just as simple as just reminding yourself. It's just reminding yourself of like, okay, there are also positive things. Yeah.
And one of the things that came to mind just during that discussion is, we've been talking about how we can look at things, right? The perspectives that we take, trying to balance things out. External people who are guiding us and who are around us also have a role to play, don't you think? Because I remember when I was in primary school, right? And then we have that report book. And at the report book, you have all your grades and the what your position in class and that kind of thing. And then there's the comments, right? And the teacher would say something like, oh, he's diligent, he's hardworking, he's polite, he's a good student, but he needs to improve his handwriting. And the one thing that I remember after reading that as a kid is he needs to improve his handwriting. All right, that's feedback, but that's when we think about like this automatic thoughts, it seems to be the negative thought that sticks in the mind. For people who are coaching others, right? Do you think that there is a way that we could bring ideas across so that this negative thoughts like don't take priority over the positive ones?
I have a simple proposal. I don't know if, this might work for all, but I think that there is a lot of power in the word but, right? Because I think in your example, Sean, you said how, there was, a bunch of praises, and then there's that but that negated everything because you took that away, right? What came after the but was your handwriting sucks.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Something
Sorry.
like that.
Yeah. So I think instead of trying to, give feedback with but, I think it might be more helpful to use the word and. It sounds a little bit gentler. The content might not be different that much. However, the delivery could, sound a lot more palatable to the receiver, right? For instance, Sean, you were a good student, and you could also improve on your handwriting.
Sounds that would have carried a different kind of message,
right?
I feel.
Yeah, instead of your handwriting was terrible. Sorry.
That's probably the truth.
Yeah, so like a simple adjustment here could be potentially helpful in, sort of just lightening the impact or the heaviness of the negative comment, I suppose.
All right. Nico, any tips?
No, I don't really have more tips. I would just add that Yes, just I think sharing. Yeah, just a thought that I think just sharing the as much positive as possible. It's always very useful. Not just in a weird, not just in a strategic way to try to like not hurt feelings and so on. Yeah, that's important. I think, especially for a child and everything. But also just I think it's useful for us to know, because we tend to think that okay, so even when you have a review by someone, or someone kind of give you some feedback, they're going to be like listing like positives first, and then they're going to go for like your learning age, or like
Oh,
the
that's the
for
sandwich model or something, right?
right.
Or the hamburger model. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, or or and so on. So there are those kind of like the strategic ways of doing it. But I think that so I'm not. So what I'm saying is that so it can be useful to share positive stuff, but not just in that with that goal of trying to like not hurt feelings. I think it's important to also share positive stuff, because you really have more clarity about then what are your strengths. And I think if you want to give someone the ability to, navigate their own life, professional life, for instance, they have to know what their strengths are and not just what they suck at. Right? Like really, it's useful to know how we can improve, but I think we have to know exactly what we're strong at, because it's also a good. That's going to point the direction where we should be going to, really. Our strong points. And I think that's useful beyond, again, just that kind of like, oh, don't hurt feeling and everything. So there's like a deeper meaning into sharing what's positive, and also focusing what's positive when sharing with someone, if that makes sense. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Oh, at this point, I'd like to thank the people who are with us. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being with us and joining us on the final episode of this season, which is our first season, by the way. We have a message from Samuel. Hi, Samuel. Thanks for being here, and thanks for your message earlier on. Samuel says, let me show it. Well, joy may also be related to a person's life stage. For example, children tend to be more joyful than the elderlies. Oh, Amerie, do you agree? Or if you do, why do you think this is so?
Yes, probably. And that's also one of the reasons why sometimes in therapy we encourage people to take a childlike curiosity to approach, life events and challenges, right? Because, when you look at kids and how they approach things, there's always a lot of curiosity. There is less sort of ideas around shame or fear. They just want to try and see how things go, right? They're able to be in a moment. They can look at a worm and be super excited. Whereas when you're like later on in our later years, we might get creeped out or disgusted, right? So I think there is a lot for us to learn from kids when they're able to be, curious and non-judgmental in their experience. And yeah, certainly you can see a lot more kids who are a lot more carefree than adults. And perhaps it's because they haven't acquired some of these biases that we talked about earlier, right? And they're more able to just really stay in the moment and savor the experience.
Yeah, I would just add. So actually, some research show that, which is kind of counterintuitive, that not just focusing on, so if we exclude the children, but we just look at adults throughout the lifespan, so from your 20s maybe to maybe 70 and 80. And so some research shows that the older people get, the more they experience positive emotion as opposed to negative emotions during the day. So it's actually the case that as you grow older, especially in old age, you actually tend to experience you're actually happier and more joyful. Yeah.
So a U-shaped curve.
Yeah. Well, so I'm so on that specific paper there was no data for children, so I don't know how that would how the children would compare with the elderly. It's possible that the children will still be like happier than the elderly. But definitely comparing your only 20s, 30s, 40s to the later half of life, you're definitely going to be happier in the later half of your life. So that's something to look forward to. These are averages, and that's for most people. And that makes sense if you think of the fact that many of the kind of pressure you put yourself on in the 20s, 30s is to accomplish a number of things, at least at the material level, maybe family level, you want to start a family and so on, And by the time you get old, you might or might not have accomplished your goals, but you look at it in a way that you might have children when you wanted children. So you might look back at what you accomplished with more serenity and more distance that you'll be able to while you're in the midst of it. Yeah, so it's one of the explanations.
And I find it very interesting because when I watch some of these videos about people talking about what are that eventually when you grow old, these are the things that matter in life kind of stuff, and it's seldom about money, it's seldom about success or something. It's usually about impact, it's usually about family, and usually about doing relationships, etc. Oh, and it reminds me once where when I first went into training, I was a young guy, right? I was 28, 29 as a trainer. And when I was teaching one of my first night classes, one of the learners came up and she was sharing her experience on stuff that she was proud of or stuff that made her happy. And at that point, she had 4 kids, right? So during the break time, I went up to her and I said, hey, her name, right? I said, oh, you have 4 kids right now. I'm not married yet, but I was just curious and I just wanted to ask you, why 4 kids? Isn't that quite a lot? And don't you find that detracts you from the ability to push ahead in your career? And she says, yes, it has slowed me down a little bit. I'm okay, but it has slowed me down more than what I wanted to, where I felt I could have been. But he says, Sean, when you grow old next time and you look back at your life, you will see that when you have a family and you have relationships and you have your kids around you, that means so much more than whatever money or whatever big house you have. All right. And so at the end of the day, it's these people that bring happiness and joy to you. It's not really, all the material wealth and things like that. Yeah. So it just gave me a very different perspective. Because at that point, I would argue even right now, right, there are so many things that I'm chasing. You're chasing success, you're chasing impact, you're chasing a lot of things. Why, Amerie? Funny?
Chasing girls.
Yeah, now I'm in the position to be able to do that. Yeah. Samuel, thank you for the question. Yeah. So, as I was sharing that, I realized that what we've been talking about in the past half an hour maybe has been about managing worry or managing these negative thoughts. And one of the things I thought would be interesting to discuss are some of the types of joy or the types of happiness, things that could bring joy and happiness to someone. I think there are a few different things, right? We've thought about curiosity, probably the excitement of learning something new or experiencing something new. One of the things that I always remember I always tell people as one of the happiest times in my life is when I captained the national junior team. So we were in Pakistan. It was the Asian Junior Squash Championships. And so the protocol is that during the opening ceremony, the male team captain will lead the whole contingent into the squash court, right? And then followed by the female captain and the coach and the manager and the coach, something like that, right? And the rest of the players. And because I happened to be the male team captain, so I was holding the national flag and I was marching, like walking with the whole contingent inside the court. And they were playing the national anthem after that. And that sense of pride, that sense of, you're just overwhelmed with emotion, right? When being able to represent the country, and also because I fought so hard for that dream to be able to do that. Yeah. And at that point, I kind of realized that one source of happiness is to be really proud of something, to be proud of an identity, to be proud of an achievement. I say pride, probably the sense of satisfaction that you have accomplished something. Yeah. There are probably other things that make up happiness, and I was wondering if you have any thoughts on what are some of the other things that contribute to a person's happiness. Nico, you want to take this one first?
Yes. So as you were telling the story, I was thinking, yeah, and I think in that kind of pride that you share, there's also underneath like that sense of belonging, like that saying, not to say that personal pride in something you've done on your own and so on is a bad thing. I think it's a really good thing, very valuable. But I think there's also that sense of like having contributing to a group and being acknowledged, having that contribution be acknowledged and sharing in maybe the success that may have brings, or if that didn't work out, maybe grieving what hasn't been and so on. I think that's a that sense of having our actions, decisions, things we say, things we share, make sense in a group we care about. I think it's a source of joy. Yeah, feel having that kind of when we use the word impact a lot, but just and that's that. But really, with belonging, meaning that sense of like that's for a group that we really feel for. It's not that there's a genuine there sense of there's love there in what's experienced. So that's just something I wanted to add. And then my personal, maybe Amerie. So I have something else. Maybe Amerie can want to jump into, share something.
Go for it.
Yeah. Okay. So then, well, obviously with my nap story, and also my background in meditation.
It's still in your mind, isn't it? This nap.
No, but seriously, and my background in meditation, there's that sense that one of the great source of joy and happiness, it's really rest, actually. And not just sleep and not just lying down on the sofa, but a sense of like what I would call like maybe like a kind of like basic restfulness, kind of that sense of like, oh, things are okay, like everything that I could deal with I've dealt with, and kind of like taking a sigh and just kind of like moments of relaxation, and that sense that because to me it's kind of like once you remove all the worry we've talked about, all those like negative thoughts, maybe when that goes away because you've settled things, you deal with what you have to deal with, you dealt with what you have to deal with, and so on, or you have ways to train yourself to get out of that negative space, then you kind of fall in that space of just basic resting and happiness. And I think that's, to me, it's kind of like that ground that you land on. And once you've cleared all the things, all the clutter, I would say, even if it's just for a minute, not talking about the stuff always come up, right? But those moments, yeah, I feel they're important.
Yeah, and it reminds me of one of the incidents. Not really an incident, right? It was a wonderful experience. Towards the end of July, I think I went on a cruise. It was 4 days, 3 nights, and that rest and that sense that I don't feel like it's like I have settled anything or everything at work, right? That is like it's I always knew that there was a huge workload that was there, but I think just to be away for 4 days, 3 nights, it just brought a sense of calm. It brought a sense of freshness, a sense of clarity, and I actually came back to work feeling a lot better. And it's when people ask me how was that cruise, I just say I was really, really happy I went for that cruise. Maybe it is because we haven't really traveled in 2 years. But I think for me, one of the times I experienced the most is just looking out into the vast ocean and having a sense of space, having a sense of freedom, at least psychologically. And it did a lot for me and I suppose my mental health. Yeah. Amerie, some components
Thoughts?
of happiness? Yeah.
Yeah, lots. Sorry, I mean, my mind was just going.
Go
So,
for it.
yeah, I think joy is multiplied when shared. I mean, when I hear you guys talk, I think really this is probably one of the fundamentals, right? Sure, positive experiences are great, joy, happiness, bliss. But when these experiences are shared, they can be multiplied, right? Because there is so much joy intrinsically with socially connecting. Yeah, and I think that that was just something that really stood out. And we also talked, I think, Nico, what was it you were sharing earlier? I also had thoughts about that.
So the belonging, pride and belonging,
Pride, belonging.
as part of loving kind of connection with the group.
Oh, you're talking about the rest. That's right. So I was thinking about the
Okay, yeah.
Maslow's hierarchy, right?
Right.
And how perhaps, when we have our basic needs met, when we actually tend to our basic needs, that alone can bring us sheer joy, right? Because that's just fundamentally who we are and what we need. Rest, sleep, movement. I mean, for me personally, it's movement. Yeah, so it's really about the little things, the basic units of what makes us us. Yeah.
I remember there are times when I played less squash or I did less physical activity, and everything just felt like there was a much heavier burden, much heavier mental burden. And the reason why I choose not to play squash at the early to mid parts of my career is because I felt like there's always work to do. There's always something more to do. And I was worried that if I go out and I exercise or I move or I do physical activity, I might be more tired. But what I've realized over the years, having done all the work I've done, is I actually feel more energetic and I feel happier when I do more exercise. Right? And that kind of makes a very, very big difference. Well, when Emery was sharing a little bit about what she feels makes us, like, brings us happiness, one of the things she mentioned was contributing, right? And sharing that joy. I think it reminds me of an incident which it happened in the very first project that I ran in a company. So all the little kids that we did a program for school kids, right, to teach them what it's like to be a healthcare professional. And at the end of this program, they were supposed to demonstrate those skills in front of everyone, right, their friends. So as like a little assessment or a test. So we ran that showcase, and one of the things I taught the kids was how to do a blood sugar prick. Yeah, it was super fun, right? And you think that only healthcare professionals can do it. Oh man, you should take a look at these kids, right? They can perform the skill at the same level as healthcare professionals. And not said by me, said by another healthcare professional that came in to help me do the program. So as they were going around and they were pricking all their friends' fingers, right? So what happens is that during recess time, all their friends will come down, their school leaders, the teachers, principals, everyone will come down to get their finger pricked. And midway through that, one of the kids came and she tugged onto my shirt, and it was like, "Oh, Mr. Ang, is this why you do what you do?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Oh, I prick other people's finger. I also feel very happy." Yeah, and I was like, I thought about it for a while, and one of the things that I told her was that, for us being in healthcare, it's not everyone openly demonstrates their appreciation for you, right? If you're going to decide to come into healthcare because you think that everyone's going to appreciate you, you find it very difficult to stay on long in healthcare. I think a big part of at least why I stay in healthcare for so long is because part of the joy, part of the happiness is not just about the appreciation that comes to me, but being able to give a part of myself to someone else or to a greater good. Yeah, and I think that action of giving, does bring a sense of it's a sense of fulfillment that's really hard to describe. Right? how do you say? I still volunteer at the prison, right, on Saturday mornings, and I used to stay at Pioneer, which is like as west as can be, almost as west as can be in Singapore, and where I volunteer is in Changi Prison, which is as east as can be. So on Saturday mornings, when I volunteer, I have to either take a Grab ride. Grab is a private hire vehicle, right? It will cost about $34. Or if I take public transport, it's 1 hour and 50 minutes because of the number of transfers. Yeah, but when I go in, you see the inmates and they're so happy to see us, and you share your thoughts, you share your skill set, your experience, and they gain something from it. At the end, they will shake your hand, you say, oh, thank you. Not just me, right? The whole group of volunteers, right? Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. See you again next week, Mr. Sean. Stuff like that. And when I walk out of prison, that sense of accomplishment is, at that point, it was very new to me, because it's being in business for a while. I don't have as much frontline experience, right? You don't get that kind of satisfaction as immediate as it used to be, right? But when you're in business, a part of it is you have to look at sales, because no sales, no business, right? That's the truth. And at that point, that sense of satisfaction came because it's something that money cannot buy. Right, it's that sense that, in fact, I actually had to spend money to travel all the way there to volunteer. But yeah, I mean, once again, it's about giving a part of yourself to something else, something that you believe in, something which is a greater good. Yeah. Yeah. And even though I was never very much a volunteer person, I kind of wish that, more people had that same feeling, that same experience. Yeah. Long story, I know. Just some thoughts that came to my head.
No, it's important to share. I think a few episodes ago, we did talk about how being able to give is a blessing, right? And yeah, I think, it's only when you experience that you know how truly meaningful that is. And certainly, joy would be an understatement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, when it comes to joy, all right, and we always say that, as we discussed earlier, there is always different views you can take on the situation. All right, not discounting or not ignoring the fact that something is happening, but just saying that, okay, this has happened, but there's also another side to it. Is there something I can learn from it, etc. Right? There's this issue where this thing becomes overdone. All right, to the point that it becomes, as they call it, toxic positivity. All right, so I think for the benefit of the audience, Nico, you want to share what what do you understand by toxic positivity?
Yeah, so so it's good vibes only. That's the thing. Just that kind of trend that consists in cutting off from your life, or at least like getting some distance from people who you feel are not as happy as they might be, or might sound as negative or critical, or not in the best mood, and really demanding of people around you that they are happy all the time, available for you, giving 100% of the time, and always positive when they're around you. So that's really that. So what's toxic about it? Because that sounds great. I think we all want positivity around you. That would be so much easier. And I think it's a legitimate kind of need as well. Like, we can sense that if everyone around us was positive and happy all the time, that would be so much easier to stay happy ourselves, right? So I think there's a real intuition that there is contagion in terms of like, when we're around positive people, we're going to feel happy. But the truth is that we as humans are not just, as we've said, wired to be happy 100% of the time, and sometimes we're not. And it's tough on people to exclude them and isolate them just because they're not able to meet impossible standards, just based off their own makeup, or maybe their difficult life circumstances, essentially things they have no control on, or things they don't know how to control. Yeah.
And I mean, toxic positivity. I mean, it's the kind of situation where every time something bad happens, people just tell you, "Oh, just stay positive. Look on the bright side," etc. It can sound very
dismissive.
Yeah, the intentions are good. Yeah, but I think it's perhaps is it the way that it's expressed? Yeah, that maybe drives some kind of as you say, a very dismissive kind of feeling. And it seems to discount the fact of what's actually happening.
So, maybe on the discounting, I don't know if Amerie want to comment on that, but I just want to add. Just want to say before we go into that. So that's also, for some people, it can also be a protective mechanism. A way to say, I cannot receive what you're telling me right now, or I cannot listen to what you have to share. And we all been in such a situation where we just didn't have a bad day, something bad happened to us, and we just could not be available for someone who's suffering or someone who needs our attention because we needed it for ourselves first. So sometimes that can be a protective mechanism for us to just, when we need our own space to deal with our own stuff. Yeah, to say, okay, I'll just stay happy, as if that was something we're telling ourselves actually in the moment. But sometimes not. Sometimes it's kind of like a habit and that can be a problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amerie?
Yes. So I do think that, when someone is just all about the positivity, all about let's stay happy, let's not worry about the problems, it can come across as quite invalidating to someone who might actually be struggling.
Yeah.
So this idea of toxic positivity, ironically, could cause a lot of judgment towards emotions that are deemed less positive, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we talked about it before that, emotions are not good or bad, right? But this whole sort of clinging on to we must be happy, we must be positive, right, gives the other emotions like sadness or anger a bad name. When the truth is that, it's actually okay to feel those emotions too, right? It's okay to make space for them without having to ignore them or, just pretend they're not there, push them away. And in fact, joy is actually being able to stay neutral to all these emotions. I realized that, you can still do your stuff without being bossed around by these different feelings. Does that make sense?
What do you mean neutral?
So if I feel sad, right, I don't need to feel the pressure to get rid of my sadness to feel happy right now, right? Because that's what this idea of toxic positivity does, right? It's this pressure that, you have to be good, you have to feel good, right? And that anything less than good is not okay. And ironically, it just makes you feel worse. It's almost like, nothing else is able to be tolerated except for happiness, which again, ironically, makes you less tolerant to emotions overall. And it's hard to stay joyful and at ease, when, you're feeling kind of sad or down because you're judging yourself for feeling those things. Yeah.
And this kind of thing happens when, you hear comments like, people have ever told me happiness is a choice. Right? And this kind of implies that if you choose to feel negative, it's actually your own fault. And then people tend to feel guilty about feeling a negative emotion like sadness, like shame, like all the other things like disappointment, like embarrassment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that denies them the opportunity to grow from that experience.
Yes, and I would even go further. Like it almost denies them the opportunity for that kind of feeling bad to be cared for. Meaning, if you're not ready to feel that maybe you're grieving or you're really sad or you're hurting somehow, you won't know that you need to care for yourself. Like if you're in that mode that, oh, I can't just like think that away and happy always and so on. Like you don't allow yourself to, if you cannot allow yourself to even feel the emotions, you don't even allow yourself the space to heal that. And I would say in the group, it's kind of the same thing. So if you're with people or in a group around which sharing your negative experiences of how you're feeling is not allowed. And I mean, just to be clear, there are times when that's cool and that's not cool. There's good times to do that. I mean, obviously, you don't show up at someone's birthday party, and feeling like all the negative things happen. I mean, you have to be sensitive in terms of just because that's not a space where people will be able to hear it. But at times where people can hear it, people can hear it, and you're unable to share it because maybe you fear that kind of backslash in terms of good vibes only. Then you deny people that opportunity to heal you. Because I think as we share those experiences, we heal as well. I mean, when people can listen to us in our suffering, our grieving, and essentially just see us in those moments where we're not our best, then that's healing in the sense of like, oh, it's okay to feel bad also. I won't get rejected from society or my friends or whatever just because I'm feeling that. And to that process, you're kind of learning to accept those emotions and care for them and then act on them if I need to get better or to change something about your life but at least you have access to that awareness of what they mean and what they tell you about how things are.
Yeah, I agree. I think sorry.
Go ahead, Amerie.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking about the idea of being optimistic, right? It's being optimistic is not telling someone who's grieving, like, just be happy, just stay positive. But it's really acknowledging that, yes, there is pain, right? And at the same time, staying hopeful, right? I think true optimism is not denying the negative emotions or negative experiences, but really acknowledging them and having a different approach to these emotions.
And I think, sorry if I can add something.
No,
I feel
Nico, please.
Going back to the age thing earlier, so Samuel question about age, I feel like with age, there's a sense that, so I think when you're younger, we kind of go through, I'm feeling sad, I'm sad now, I'm happy now, I'm excited now, I'm angry now. We go through those like emotional states from one to the other. And we kind of are the sadness, we kind of are the anger, we kind of are the happiness or the excitement. We turn into those small characters like, in Inside Out movie, and my sense is that, so I have some of that experience now as I get older, but, what I also hear from older people is that with age, there's a sense I realize that those emotions come and go, and you're going to have negative emotions. The older you are, obviously, the more you're going to experience loss and grief. I think that's straightforward. That's there, right? So, but there's also a capacity to have that, to hold together those kind of like the sadness and the joys and the grieving and the excitement, and the serenity. They can all kind of like live together, and we don't have to jump from one to the other. That can happen, but also that sense that you can accept all of them. So you can feel sad and still feel that there's happiness there. There's that space for things to be more fluid. And I think that comes with age, I think. And I don't claim I understand that, but that sense that, you can hold all those conflicting emotions in a more peaceful way, I suppose. And not being in a tug of war with them, trying to like, push away the negative and, pull in the positive. And yeah.
A part of it is because at an older age, or whatever age you are, I mean, when you think of something back in the past, you're now able to remove yourself like from directly experiencing that emotion. And if you look at it in perspective, you kind of realize that yes, it was a tough moment, but yes, I kind of got through it. Yeah, it's just when you are involved in the moment right at that point, it's
And I
very
think-
hard to.
Yeah. Sorry.
Go ahead, Nico. Oh.
I was
It's contagious.
just at the time when I was slow. Hopefully it's not. No, I'm fine. But although I do come back from traveling, so I'm actually relatively. I should be careful. But then I've lost my train of thought. Yeah, and I think it goes the other way around, that sense of perspective. So I don't know if you guys have experienced that, but so you were sharing about how, you kind of, with perspective, you look back at, say, negative events, and you're like, you can have some distance from that. But there also, I don't know if you had that experience, but there are moments where in a moment you feel the stress, you feel the pressure, maybe at work, at a time where it's very busy at work or at home, and you feel completely overwhelmed, and that's what was the experience in a moment. But then stepping back 2-3 years down the road, you think back about that exact same period, and you kind of like, wait, actually that was a pretty happy period as compared to some other ones. Because then with the distance, you kind of like weigh down those negative emotions have less impact, and the kind of positive one kind of like come up with the surface, and you kind of read the same life event slightly differently. You put on different lens, and you're like, oh, actually there was some
Rosy
really cool moments there.
retrospection.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
So one of the things that as we were talking about the toxic positivity, and it's so it one of the impacts it has, and I experienced that from my patients, right? Which is, they feel shame because they are not able to see things in a positive way, and for them it's mental illness, right? It's a different thing, right? But the effect of that is they tend to hide how they really feel. They don't dare to show it. They have to now disguise it because it is just more socially accepted. Right? And that makes it hard for them to live life. Well, I think it's hard for anyone to live life if you have to hide behind the real you, right? Yeah.
Can I just say something here? So yes, and I think here it's important to what can be useful as a first step, because there's that shame around not feeling well, and that sense of like you have to keep a front. But also I think it's important to maybe honor that capacity we have of like looking okay when we're not. Maybe if we can think about times where it's necessary to present in a way that you look fine, you can handle things, even though you don't feel well inside. So I think yes, if it's become something that permanent and you're always in that because you're feeling that pressure and that shame, it's hard because you feel trapped in that. But I think the first way of approaching it is just maybe acknowledging that it's there, and that sometimes it's useful to be able to like keep pushing on when you're not feeling well, to present well, in certain like work setting or family setting, because there's decorum. I mean, you have to be there and get work done or care for someone, or without showing how you're feeling. And so I think it's also important to acknowledge that capacity we have of doing that, because we don't want to have another layer of shame as well, meaning feeling shame because we're not acknowledging that we're not okay, if that makes sense. Feeling shame for not being able to really show to others that we're hurting, or So it's important to be sensitive around that, I think. Yeah. That makes sense?
Yeah, I think you're saying like having an alternative narrative to this idea that, perhaps, yeah, I mean, that's not a great experience having to, suppress how they feel and having to showcase it, themselves in a positive light, even though they're struggling. But at the same time, it's a kind of resilience too.
Yeah. And that's something we do as well, just like, feeling having a negativity bias. It's just something us humans do, hiding that we're feeling bad, hiding that, because it might have a social cost to do so. We might be shamed for doing so, or people at work think we're going to be underperforming and so on. So, the same way that tendency or that drive to present like a social kind of mask that says, oh, I'm okay, I'm doing great, even when I'm not. That's also something sometimes we don't have a control over. Yeah, so we shouldn't be judging ourselves too much for doing that sometimes, I feel.
Is it the same as fake it till you make it?
No, I think it's slightly different. To me, fake it till you make it is can actually work sometimes. And I think it's more, well, it depends how you mean by it, but to me it's more about skills, like maybe work skills, So I think that's fine. It's just about skills, because skills, you can always acquire them. It's not. We know we can learn stuff. If you have the capacity to learn, you would know. So I think in fake it till you make it, there's a sense that I can get there. I don't have any learning disability. I have basic material comfort, so I can do the learning. I can train myself and so on. And so I can get there. I'm not there yet. So I wanna fake it thing, and I just think like many entrepreneurs know about, right? So you take care of like the front first, and then make sure you can present in a way that is trustworthy. But if you have some integrity, that behind that there's a real capacity to show up, step up, and be there when there's a need to, right? So I think that's I think to me that's fine. It's more like a work strategy thingy, because it doesn't touch with something really deep on which you might not have control, which is really about how you feel. But when it comes to emotion, that's when it gets toxic and tricky, because we present, but we might never have the ability to overcome those emotions without help, and the sense of having to present prevent us from getting the help we need or caring for ourselves. So I think that in those two different areas, does that make sense? So let's say fake it till you make it applied to I'm not feeling well and apply to emotion. It's really not a good idea, even though it's normal that we would do that as a first kind of strategy, or sometimes. Yeah.
Amerie, any other thoughts?
No, I was just listening. Yeah, and it's nice to receive. No, I'm serious. Like, I don't think we give enough credit to things like that. Like, I think that's the reason why we enjoy going for courses and learning, right? I really like attending like training conferences, those sorts of things. Yeah, because it is nice to receive. I find joy in learning. Yeah.
One of the things that excites me is having conversations with people. And it doesn't matter whether they are a founder or a CEO, all right, or whether they are, working at ground level operations work. Because I always have this feeling that the other person that I'm speaking to can do something better than me in certain ways, right? It could be administration that I'm so poor at, but they can do it really, really well. And I kind of look up to them for being able to do that. And when they like share with me, oh, this is how I do it, I find it very exciting. And I find that it's something that I can learn from everyone. Yeah. And that happiness of learning is something that it's very exciting for me. I always find. Okay. We are past the hour mark. So I think it's time for closing statements. Let's do it for this episode, and let's see if we want to talk about the season after this. Okay. let me go first. I think when it comes to joy, for me, one of the things that has helped me the most is actually being grateful and being thankful in whatever situation that I experience, be it good or a not so good experience. Like there is something that I can learn from everything, and no matter what happens, there is still good in me. There is still good in the world. There is still good in other people, and when I ask myself what I'm grateful for, it kind of gives me perspective. It grounds me, and just by doing that, it brings a lot of joy, I would say, to my life. So I think for everyone who's listening, if you really just ask yourself what are a few things that you're grateful for, and just be very honest, right? Because when you think about these things, there's no need to fluff it up for anyone else to see. It's just internally you ask yourself, and if you find those three things that you're grateful for, the world is a much happier place, and you are actually way more successful than and more fortunate than you think you are, right? So yeah. Emery?
Okay, so my takeaway from this conversation is silver linings with silver hair, right? I mean, it just came to my head. Silver linings with silver hair. So, even if we have wrinkles, that's okay, because at least we'll feel better, right? At some point, the wrinkles won't matter. Well, it rhymes. So, that and I guess this idea of joy. Yes, I agree with Sean. It's really practicing gratitude, even when things aren't going so well. I mean, certainly I've had days when I've had, say, difficult sessions, and it just could be very overwhelming. But really, being thankful for the good things that did happen, the fact that I could still show up and serve. Yeah, I mean, I do have a practice before I go to bed every night to really think about something good that happened, no matter how bad I feel. And I oftentimes as well go to bed just thanking myself for having the strength to show up and serve, right? And hoping that it could be the same the next day. So this is kind of like a little ritual I have for myself, which I feel has served me well. Yeah.
Yeah, I can relate to that. It sometimes, no matter how bad it's the day, if you take a look at it, no matter what happened, I showed up with the good intentions.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nico?
Let me see. Yeah, I don't think I have a very compelling kind of end thing. But other than I don't know, there's still that rest thing that coming up for me. And that's the fact that
Napping is good for health.
maybe I should have
for
planned my
instance.
nap. I should have scheduled my nap. But yeah, so that sense of like, yeah, there's this so in finding some kind of like, so we talked about very kind of ways to cultivate like positive feelings, and I'm aware that they might sound like work, because at the core they really are, because we're really pushing against like the stream of like a lot of like biological kind of like predeterminations and programming and so on, and so there's but then it's important to realize that for all of us, there are going to be kind of different ways of doing that. So we shared a few, but there might be more. And so it's important to explore for yourself and try things out. Some people it's going to be gratitude. Some people it's going to be like affirmations in the morning. Some people it's going to be exercise. Some people it's going to be spending more time with people. It gets possible things. And so there's just a lot of like resources out there in terms of like things you could do to try to care for yourself in a way that you make yourself feel better sometimes when that's possible. But I still think that with all those more active practices, there's tools to get to a kind of place of restfulness, that you can kind of like relax and be like, okay, that's whatever I had to do has been done. What I couldn't do, but I've done, what I couldn't do too bad. I did my best. In a sense of like, satisfaction despite what's going on outside and the external circumstances. And, the many ways your brain is telling you that you've screwed up or you'll be screwing up and so on. So, finding in the midst of all those things happening, trying to find like a ground and a space of where you can really rest. At least 4 moments, and look for those moments during the day as well, can be helpful.
Oh, nice. And well, that brings us to the end of our final episode of the season.
Yay!
Yay!
So we'll be drinking. We should be drinking, right? Champagne. You have something. We need water for me.
Am I allowed to take alcohol? No?
Yeah. Why not?
Okay, I shouldn't say this kind of stuff online.
Yeah.
I think let's
just a sip.
Yeah, let's. Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers.
Wow, it's been 6 episodes. I think looking back and at the first episode where we were thinking, oh, what should we do? What should we talk about? Introduction? Should we go straight into an emotion? I think that was fun. I think we've looking back on the past 6 episodes, I feel like these are conversations that we could have like anytime we caught up. And yeah, I think it's very nice to be, it's a joy of being able to share these thoughts with other people and having them engage with, our thoughts, drawing their own conclusions based on our sharing. I don't know, it's I've always looked forward to this session. Sometimes, we do feel tired because it's been a long week, and the next day most of us have to go to work. But any thoughts like on the end of season sharing?
We showed up.
We showed up. We did.
Yeah. And I think it's really nice how we just created something. Like we created an experience out of nothing, really. I mean, it was really just, we came together, we're bouncing some ideas, we had, some stuff in common, and then we just created something. I like that idea of creation. Yeah, and there's a lot of joy in not knowing, because we didn't know where we were going to go, but we just, did it anyway, and it just, it was like, it just all came together nicely.
Yeah, part of the excitement or the joy is, I think we got better as the sessions went by. We felt more comfortable. We at least we got more used to the sequence, the format, the style of the conversation, and I think not expecting to be perfect at the start. Yeah, and getting better along the way, that was nicer. We had better backgrounds. We had more platforms where people could engage with us in a pure audio format, and I think that has arguably gotten more views than our video.
Possible. So I haven't looked at what that looks like now. But
but it's very nice to know that. Nico, any thoughts for the past 3 months?
No, not much. I mean, I'm just it's cool. So I'm glad there was.
He just wants a nap.
Yeah, no, I can. It's okay. I can still function. I'm happy to be here. But yeah, I think it's cool. I mean, I think when you have some connections with people and basic sense of trust, and some idea, you can just see what happens. I think it's exciting.
Yeah. Very
And,
exciting.
I'm just curious about what's next.
What's next?
Yeah.
What's next? All right. What's next is a full season on relationships.
I wonder
Something
who
that's
thought of
fun.
that. I
Huh?
wonder who thought of that.
Well, it's a very interesting topic to discuss, right? I think because most of us have been through good times and bad times in relationships, exciting times, and when you think back on this, usually there are a lot of lessons that you feel like you've learned, a lot of realizations. You hear things from your friends as well, and you piece all of that together to form a certain thought process when it comes to relationships. I think it'll be very fun to discuss these things in our next few episodes. Especially now with dating apps, like it's taken like getting to know people to a different level, right? At some point, dating apps were just seen as a place where people go to for hookups and things like that. But right now it's getting more and more common where people actually meet their life partner there, right?
Yeah, and also I'm also really curious about how those relationships play out in a broader relationship space. With like relationship with friends, relationship with families, and how they interact, how there's a match or not. How that what might happen
And
there.
yeah,
They
and
compete,
the excitement of chatting with somebody that you've matched, having long conversations with them, sometimes 6 hours long. Yeah. Emery, any thoughts on the next few episodes we're going to do?
Just sounds like you're speaking from your experience, Sean.
Well, maybe you have to wait in the next season to know.
Yeah, I guess we'll find out.
Yeah.
We'll find out what Sean has up his
Forward to it.
sleeves.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you everyone for joining us for the past 6 episodes. You probably be happy to know that we are not going to take much of an extended break because we will still continue to do our sessions once every 2 weeks. So 2 weeks later, we'll be back on with the second season. Please do join us and do let your friends know about this. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, especially on Facebook. We have our Facebook page, and we're on all the major platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all the popular and less popular platforms. We're everywhere, right? If you need help with that, just drop us a message anywhere. We'll be happy to lead you or direct you. Yeah. Right. Thank you so much. It's been a joy. It's been a pleasure for us to be with you. And we will see you 2 weeks later for season 2. All right.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.